Uh, uh, it's basic. I think it's a story about why I came to understand that racism is so stupid. Uh, my father had been a fighter, a good one, a professional. He had turned down some opportunities. He knew Jack Johnson. He had turned down an opportunity to be with him or go with him because of, and he always complained that it was because he had listened to a racist. Like it was the greatest opportunity he had ever had, and he missed it because he had listened to a racist. And then I had a friend a little later that, a black kid in junior high that we were good friends for about a year, and in the process of that, I figured out rather quickly that he was both braver and smarter than I was, and so there was never any question after that. And then the story that I was telling the other night had to do with being in Montana and. Just running well.
So George, how old were you?
At this point, I think this happened when I was about 15, somewhere right in there. I had decided, my couple of friends and I had ended up, I had bought a car for $50 in a bar that was probably stolen out of Utah. It didn't have any plates. They didn't have any windows.
Of course.
It was a 50 Mercury, and it was a flathead 8, and it had headers, and it had been partially leaded in, so it was like really cool. And like I say, it was $50, and we managed to get that from the box shop, and off we go with this car. And in the process, we decided to head for Eastern Washington from Montana to get jobs with the crops. And so we don't have any money, but we get a bunch of ranch gas and such in 5-gallon cans. We get, and plus we had, I don't know, remember where we got it. We had 5 cases of beer. and some stolen license plates. We stole the license plates from the neighbor's car. And
so George, what were they drinking back then?
This would have been probably, well, we had my dad had a distributorship going for Lucky Lager. We brought Lucky Lager into that part of Montana. Up to that point, there'd only been one distributor, and he did Great Falls Select. Okay. That was the big beer there. Okay. And we did Lucky Lager, and we had Miller's, and we had Butte beer, which was horrible beer. Yeah.
Anyway, so you got what? 5 cases of beer?
We got 5 cases of beer, 10 gallons of gas, and a bunch of and whatever else we get our hands on, and we leave. And my mother's best friend's brother was a detective with the Missoula police force. And so she just called him, and they were waiting for us in Frenchtown. And we arrived about 2 in the morning, and the state troopers had us, and off we go to the Missoula jail, and where we get to spend the night. And they took my friends into the jail, and I was under 18, so they didn't want to put me in with everybody else, and they're holding me off in this office. That's 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was real mouthy. I talked them into handcuffing me to a water pipe over my head, and then they just went home. They just turned the light out in the office and went home, and I'm standing there handcuffed to this water pipe.
And they left you there?
They just left me there, yeah. Luckily, it was about 2 or 3 in the morning, because I'm going to be there all night, and I'm standing there giving a one-arm salute to the ceiling, trying to work out my next move. And I've always had this ability to take people of authority, to convince them that I need to be taught a lesson, first off, and that second is that they're the ones that should do it. And it worked.
You
with
empowered them.
Yeah, and it worked with these guys because they just click, and they turned the lights out and went home. And so I'm standing there when the light comes up in the morning, starts to get light in the office, and the door opens, and then in comes this black guy. And we didn't call black guys. They were colored,
Right.
and there was a different language. And I was surprised to see him because I didn't know that they had any in Missoula. I figured they had the one black guy they had him in jail. And he comes through, and he's got the trustee.
Isn't that kind of typical?
Yeah, that's
though?
what I'm thinking. Like, whoa, they got him, and
That's your idea of diversity,
right.
is the guy in jail.
Is the guy in jail, and I immediately thought, and he was going to understand what it was like to be handcuffed to a water pump all night, and he's sweeping the floor. And I just worked myself up to just make the most, I'm not sure what I was trying to do, but I was trying to sound tough, because you got to sound something if you stood there like that all night. And I said, he wouldn't look at me, and in my best tone, when he came close, I said, there ain't no justice. I mean, I pronounced that to this guy. And he stopped sweeping, and he turned the broom over, he banged it on the floor a little bit, and then he looked at me for a little bit, and he said, if I were you, I'd forget justice. I'd pray for mercy. If you get justice, they're just going to hang you. And he started sweeping and left, and I'm still standing there hanging to the water pipe. And I never really forgot that. Maybe the truest thing I ever heard. Yeah, just pray for mercy, because it's your only chance. And to come through that and think that somehow that I don't know. It was never touched with the racist notions, and I think it's because of the people I've known, and spared that one. It's just so stupid.
It's a pretty good story right there, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to.
I mean, that's a great little story right there.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to do that one again, because I ended up telling that at a party to a bunch of people. And
what's the punchline again?
Pray
for
mercy. Forget justice. Pray for mercy. Because if you get justice, they're just going to hang you.
That's funny.
And off he went. Another half an hour or so, the office people came in, and somebody came in and let me down. Yeah. And then they took us out. Then they took us right back out and put us back in the car and turned us around the other way. They didn't say nothing about the beer or anything. They just put us back in the car and turned us around.
Sent you on your way.
Sent us on our way back and told us never to try to come back through Missoula again. Yeah.
So, just on a little side, was your mom living in Missoula? Or
No.
your mom and your dad?
No. We were all in a little place outside of Butte. We were about 60 miles south of Butte, and that's where we left from.
And we being?
Myself and two of my friends, both of whom were 18.
And where were you living at the time?
In Dillon, Montana.
In Dillon, Montana.
Yeah, that's about.
And who
miles.
were you living with in Dillon, Montana?
Parents.
Both parents.
Yeah.
At the age of 15.
Yes. Yeah. We moved in and out of town. We had a cattle ranch, a family cattle ranch outside of town. It was about 5,000 acres, with a big whole river that ran right through the middle of it.
Well, that's God's country there.
Oh yeah. Well, now it's like it's Jesus. Then it was like poverty gulch. You had 200-300 head of cattle and no money. Nobody had any money, and hay was. You put up hay and you put up your own crops and that sort of thing, but it wasn't a money-making operation. My great-grandfather had came in there in 1860, 1850, somewhere in there, and purchased a ranch for some horses, and it was a horse ranch until it became a cattle ranch, and when beef took over, that sort of thing. Been in the family forever. It was quite a place. It was very lucky to have experienced that ranch. I lived on the ranch for a couple years, 2-3 years, and did the cowboys thing, with the real cowboy thing,
Yeah.
where you fed cows and you didn't have any heat, and there was a sod roof and
Bucking hay.
bucking hay, nickel a bale for you made $20 a day if you worked 12 hours. Blisters and sucking on lemons. Yeah, it was,
Sucking on lemons.
yeah, for thirst, you just start chewing on
Ah.
lemons because you're sweating, and so that was the idea. If you suck on a lemon, you're going to be. I don't know how true it is, but we ate a lot of lemons. Yeah, I was very lucky to experience that. All the hunting, all the guns, all of the stuff that went with it.
What was the name of the town? Dillon?
Dillon.
Dillon.
Dillon. It's a county seat.
Of which county?
Beaverhead County. It's where the Lewis and Clark went through, and it's where they found the Beaverhead Monument, the place where all the wagons and everything headed for was right there. And that was a staging area then to go further west.
And you're how far from where there?
About 60 miles south of Butte.
Okay.
And Butte was discovered by first it was a silver discovery, and my great grandfather and who was partners with a guy named W.A. Clark, who ended up being one of the richest men in the country. Because he took advantage of Butte. He figured out what it was. He went back to New York, went to the School of Mines, figured out that it was copper that was there, came back, bought up his family was in banking in Deer Lodge, and he bought up everybody. And the next thing you know, he owns the richest hill on earth. He became the senator from the state of Montana, and they got him impeached, and so he ran and won again.
Money talks, right?
Money talks, and my grandma was his family nurse.
Ah.
That's how she got. He picked her up in Bellevue Hospital in New York as a family nurse, and she went to Butte with them.
Oh, is that
and
right?
that's how she hooked up with the other side of my family, my father's side.
Oh.
My father's father and my grandmother met because of W.A. Clark and then the other side had been partners. They knew each other. They traveled back and forth. It's all intertwined. It's all Butte history and Montana history. They were some of the first 100 or 200 white people that came into Butte into Montana. There's a lot of
Yeah, I've been to Butte. Got a friend in Butte.
Oh yeah.
Then Anaconda is just north a little bit.
Anaconda was the rough, and my grandma knew both Marcus Daly, who's the one that owned Anaconda, and W.A. Clark, and he was the one who owned Butte.
Okay.
And they were married to sisters, and they hated each other. And she knew both of them personally, could talk to them. She was famous, could get anybody a job because she could go right to one of those guys. And my dad remembered Clark from his childhood coming to their cabin and bringing a wagon load of food and a wagon load of coal would be his Christmas present to the family. And he would show up,
Ain't bad.
Yeah, oh yeah. And they had stories about living in a little miner's cabin with a grand piano that his wife had given them because she had spilled ink on it. So they lived in this with a red grand piano. Childhood stories from her. That he was dead by the time I came around, the grandfather. But now I'm lost. See, I'm just kind of wandered off to the.
Oh, that's good. That's two good stories.
Off the track. My dad was quite a character, and he pretty much ran by his own rules. He was a very independent individual.
The fruit don't fall far from the tree.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. He was. And I got lucky because I couldn't stand him as a child. And he didn't mind me telling him that I hated him because he would just say that what do you expect? You're a moron, he always had an answer for everything. So we had this it wasn't a relationship other than I hated him and I was scared of him and all that sort of stuff. And then I turned into a juvenile delinquent, and he's the one that put me in the Marine Corps. I didn't join. I didn't know I was going in. He put me in. And he was really good at I was underage, and how do you do that to somebody that doesn't even know they're going, The car shows up. I found out I was a Marine because it said USMC on the door of the car. And he had taken care of all the age thing. He had fixed the birth certificate. He had done everything, and I was gone. But when I came out of there, going to the Marines, it changed his attitude about me in ways that really were helpful for both of us. And when I came out of there, he and I hooked up together, and I spent probably the next 10 years working with him as partners, doing it's really hard to describe what we were doing. We were trying to basically bring down the Federal Reserve System.
This is before the banking thing?
Yeah,
what you're
the
talking?
banking
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And that's how I spent the next 10 years
That's
with
what led
him.
into that. Okay.
Yeah, with him doing that. So and where we were really dependent on each other, and that really made it.
So you ended up getting along well.
Oh, absolutely. We were, we needed each other very, very badly, and we'd still have fights and arguments, and he was still the same person, and so was I. But I was very lucky in that I got to know him entirely differently than I had before.
As an adult?
Yeah, as an adult, we came together in ways that was, I was very lucky again with that. And with my mom too, who had seen me mostly fail and screw up and go up and down like a yo-yo with pretty much my life. As she was passing and going out, she and I were able to spend a lot of time together, and that really worked out really well too. There wasn't. She was pretty happy with me, and I was pretty happy with her. And of course, I always had been with her. She was probably the best person that I've ever known.
Yeah.
I was not the best child to have. Yeah. I got a couple of stories about going to court with my mom too.
Okay, I'm going to pause here because I want to start fresh on that.